welcome to another live. I do apologise, we've seen from uploading that unfortunately the when we play it back it doesn't actually show up the comments, which is a shame, but hopefully you guys will enjoy live or watching back, and those that comment, if there is something we need to look back on, if we maybe do it through messages so we can look back at it. So the last session, for those that have or haven't caught up, we managed to glue quite a lot down, and this session is going to be building quite a lot of it together. These clips were very handy, especially with a bigger kit. Being a lot thicker card, it was handy. You didn't want to watch me gluing down. This one is actually still drying. I'd forgotten about it, so that just shows it takes a little bit longer than the end gauge for these things to stick down. So, being a Saturday, we're not sure how many people will be around, but if anybody tunes in, it'd be lovely for you to say hello. So we are going to go ahead with our next stage. This is the last bit as such of gluing bits together that's not substantial. Hopefully as we get onto actually building the building as such, it becomes a lot more interesting. But it was nice on our last live to have a bit of a chat as I was going along. Although I did want apple pie after. One of our viewers was making apple pie, so it did make me fancy apple pie after. I'm just going to stick this one down. This one is a little bit different. You'd think, oh, it's windows. There is actually tabs here. And once this is dry, you actually build into it. Again, as I said, they've gone into such detail, every nook and cranny. And that, again, just makes it a bit more stable. I would say the fact that it's actually into another bit of a card. But now we actually start building it together. So you've got this one. Into this section. But with this one, it mentioned leaving a 4mm overhang each side. This is now for when you start building up, they actually slot in together. Another good design, I would say. And just keeping it robust and together. Just leave that for a minute. As you can see, what we're going to start building up here on this kit, I'm trying to think which bit it was, is you're actually building up this garage part. This is the end scale one that I've got here that I've already built, but we work on building this part of the shed first. So again, just being very careful when you're doing this one is making sure you've got that space either side. So I'm going to be doing that, folding these pieces back when I've added the glue and just making sure they slot in place. And slotting it in place, you automatically have the overhang there ready to use. Me and Rob are actually iPhones, and that was him. He put his phone down. That's what I like about them. You can literally, even if you lose it, if you ever watch or... Just making sure you've got that plenty of glue. Again, being thicker card, you do need quite a bit, otherwise it doesn't like to stick. I found that out. Folding on tabs back, making sure they go into place and sticking them here. I just realised I glued bits that I didn't need to, but even if you make this mistake that I have, you can actually, it won't be noticeable once you build it up. If you look inside, the bit you actually see for the kit is the door, which is the opposite side. So if you end up slightly mistaking, it's not a problem. So what's happened to my tabs here? They've just decided to misalign. So again, just being careful when you're gluing it, making sure it's all lined up. That's the handy reason I like using PVA rather than super glue, because again, you have that chance if you do make a mistake, it's not an instant dry, so you've not completely messed up. With the super glue, it would be a lot harder to rectify any mistakes. So I definitely recommend using PVA. Can take a bit longer to dry. However, as I said, for that pure chance of mistakes, it's handy in, you know, giving you a chance to move it and sort it out. And if you, like I've done previously, end up gluing the wrong side, wrong parts, again, you can just wipe it away with a bit of kitchen roll. I'd use kitchen roll rather than tissue paper, just because the tissue paper will just start to disintegrate a bit quicker than the kitchen roll. So that piece is now just drying, but as you can see, you have that space ready to glue this one into it. So that will go together, and with basically all the parts that we've already glued previously on the last session, we now go through and fit together. Again, this one's got the overhang as well for these to fit into each other. As you can see, they're fitting very nicely. Oh, I realised I'm too far away there, but they fit in nicely together. And that one's now sorted. So we're just going to give this a minute or two just to dry on that part. But as you can see, they match up lovely. If we look at a rough idea while it's drying, you can see it fits together very nicely. As I said, this will be a little bit slower process than the N-gauge. That's just purely down to the thickness of this. So it does take a little bit longer to dry. And you want to make sure it's all dried before you start building the next bit, and it then starting to fail on you. So in the kit, it wants us to use the garage door. This is why I said this is the part you actually see in the kit. As you can see, the complete difference there between the two sizes. It's crazy when you look at them together, isn't it? So even though I'd slightly glued it into that window, it's not a problem because you do not actually see it. It's covered by the other building itself. We're starting with this one and doing the single opening. This is the back of the shed when you start to build it together. And again, as you can see, it does slot in very nicely here. So we're going to go ahead and just glue. I like to glue both sides, just for any area you might have missed. But it also gives that added to stick to, especially when you've got slight little gaps. As you see, it actually lines up perfectly. I'd always use your bottom as your reference for being lined up. And always put it tightly into that corner, into that edge. As you can see, it's not as easy, especially with bigger gauge. But if anybody wants to say hello today, just gives us a chance to do something while this is drying. As I said, it is longer with the 00 gauge than the N gauge kit. But we want to make sure that it's completely dried rather than moving on and finding we get a weak spot later on. It's a lot more fiddly that way, and you risk breaking other parts trying to fix the previous ones. So a big thing with this is just taking your time, it really is, and just keeping that pressure on this edge here to make sure it's attached. So again, as I said, I found these clips and they work really well, taking the pressure off. Obviously here it's a lot harder, but having that part there means I'm not having to put pressure on the whole entire thing, because the pressure is being there applied for me. This is just making sure this side as well is attached. So while the clips are handy, as you get into certain bits of the build, you won't be able to use them. You don't want to damage anything as you're trying to build it together. And just as well watching out, as I said, with that end, because you don't want to lose that shape, that perfect square as such as you're building it. Otherwise you might come into some difficulties when building it completely. So we're starting to get there, but we've not got the full support, so always being careful you've got your support as well. No, we've lost the glue. As I said, it is such a difference using between the two sizes. As I said, I've lost my glue there, so I am going to have to do it again. But I imagine quite a lot of people have done that, so I'm going to use more glue this time, because it did actually dry pretty quick. I just didn't have a decent amount for it to hold on to. And there is quite a weight to it. That's something I have noticed. It's the weight you've actually got to it, even in just this section. So as you can see, we are nicely up on the edge there. And that's where you need to make sure it's all flush. As you go building on, you really do start to notice the difference. The biggest one that I found doing the end gauge was the doorways. Especially this one here. When it's, again, this is a build-up of a strengthener behind it, the door, the glass. I'd actually done it all in line and all flush. And I've just realised you can't see that. I do apologise. But it was all flush. However, when you put on the bottom board, it shouldn't be, because it's got the natural doorway there for you. So it's making sure you are reading the instructions properly, which I didn't. So I did not leave that there. It was all flush, so I had to do a slight adjustment. It's not too noticeable, but the bigger kit you get, I imagine it will be more noticeable. I hope people are keeping well today. Apologise for the noisy car outside. We do get a couple of those. Now all the best for our kit, eh, Rob? It just takes a lot longer than John's end gauge to dry. So we're just going to leave that for a minute or so. But as you can see, especially from the start, it all starts coming together. Really building it off that kit. However, one thing we can start making while we're waiting is the actual tower. That will give us something to do while that section is drying, just before we can build up the rest of the building. So we can go ahead with this tower here. And again, it tells you here where things need to be flush. These actually fit in. Again, they've really thought about it. Bits are all fitting together. And one thing I've noticed here when I was talking about doorways is it actually shows you on here something I missed. And it says 1 millimetre above the wall bottom. Chainsaw, Rob? You lost me with chainsaw. But yeah, you can see that overhang there is so important. And until you get to the end of the kit, you don't really see why. So we're going to let that finish off drying and move on to the chimney for now. No, I've just lost it. Serves me right for moving it, doesn't it? That's what I mean. It is so fiddly. Even if it's in the bigger gauge, because of the bigger size, it does make it a bit more fiddlier to do in different senses. So if we kind of leave that bit for a minute to dry, we go on to our tower. Which is our tower here. Now, the only thing I did notice on the last live is my blade. I'd let go a little bit too blunt. I'd used it for a few other things, and the difference with this paper, I would definitely say use a sharp knife, just replace the blade if you are doing the kit in stages and using a blade in between. because that is such a difference from the last live, how it was not tearing parts away, but it wasn't coming off as perfect as it should, really. Rob, I don't know, with masking tape, I'm worried that it's going to tear it off. That's the problem. I've got it clipped in, but the masking tape itself, I've not, I don't know how well it will go, to be honest. So again, just a size comparison here. This is the back of the tower. It's such a size difference, isn't it, when you look at it all together? But when I was building this last time, I just found it brilliant how it all fits in together. Again, it's that support within support for it, so it is. See, while it's already indented to get it out easier, I have noticed some of them do need that little extra sometimes with the blade. So again, this uses extra strengtheners in it. I would recommend with these strengtheners just going back to the instructions, because some of these parts you can easily think are needed for elsewhere. I'm not usually one to follow the instructions to the dot, but I definitely have been with this one. So we've just got a few bits that just don't want to go apart. And just take your time with it. You don't want to, in the frustration of trying to get it off, end up pulling the cardboard as such off with it. We need this one as well. Now, just be careful with these pieces. They've got little extra indentations in. I'm assuming it's for the support of these bits, because you have slight side tabs on one of these. I've noticed it on a few other bits like your door frames and things. You've got those extra supports, I think, so just be careful when cutting not to cut it all away. this one. This is literally just added support. These are actually open tabs. It does seem to show it quite clearly on the instructions, so if you're ever in doubt, just refer back to them. So again, you notice on some of these strengtheners, they've got a very flat edge and the slightly raised edge. I always do a flat edge. That's what I found from doing these kits. One of these actually go on the windows as such. Again, these clearly say flush at the bottom. You've got some pre-made indenting. So when I was doing this before, I did fold them. As it is, just again helps with your placement of these supports, because there is a gap at the edge that's needed again for when you're putting a build together. So I would definitely make sure you've got those bends in the correct place so your strengthener goes where it's need to. One thing I did notice again when doing this tower is I just didn't realise at the time how important the placement was. So you've got these supports inside just supporting the tower when it's up, and this one I'd actually done at an angle. I thought to myself, no, it's fine, it will be fine, but it gives you covers again for the top, just creating that full lifelike appearance. And while you wouldn't really see it, if you look inside, you can see where it wasn't aligned as well as it should be. But this is for a reason. John let me make kids as a practice, because this was my first kit built from Metcalfe. We'd had a lot donated. We're very lucky in that. So because of the donations, I'd not actually got to the point of building up yet. But as I said, this fire station is a very big nod to Rob's dad. It's very important we have this one in. Also in line with a scene we're hoping to have within the build. Although a lot of it has changed. I think we've given out kind of saying this is our plan for the layout, because it's changed so many times from what we already pictured. I'm sure people that have their own builds and have done it quite a bit are probably used to it themselves if you've got your rough idea, but when it comes to the plan, it doesn't always go to that, does it? So I found by bending it and just get it straight sat in, I want to make sure I've got that gap at the edge. But again, this has to be flush with the bottom. So I definitely think these kits require a lot of patience. But by getting it in line, this helps give you the support that it needs. And you've got that gap there for when you build it together. We're just going to let that dry a minute and check on our other bit. Hopefully we can now continue building that building. So that isn't as thick together. There we go, we are all dry there now. So we can continue building the rest of it. It's going to get a bit trickier with clips, I think, as I'm going on. And as I've just read on the instructions here, looking back, it says about the gluing and time for a cup of tea. So I think it's already saying in the kit just how long it will take with the glue. It's a good little indication, isn't it? I think due to how funny this angle is, we're going to go in and do this one first. I think because it's thinner, it's harder to get it really to stay in place where you want as it's drying. And again, I'm going in with my glue here, just as much glue and support as I could use. Because PVA, while it doesn't dry as quick as super glue, as long as you're in a warm room, it is pretty quick drying. It's just being careful with the weight to make sure it's got that support, otherwise it will come apart. And again, this build at this point is still flush with each other. This one I might have to sit here and hold, just purely because I'm not going to be able to get a clip here, I don't think, as this initially dries. I might be able to come in with one after, but not at the moment. But hopefully, if anyone hasn't built this kit before, or even any of the kits, it just helps people get an idea from sturdiness to how tricky it actually is, even though it's bigger gauge. I thought the end gauge was tricky enough, but they both have their strengths and weaknesses, I'd say. Also, the end gauge I found did dry a lot quicker. Things like this I literally did pretty instantly, to be honest with you. I shall put that out the way for a minute while it's drying and try and carry on with the next part. Now, there is literally nowhere I can clip at this point for that one, unfortunately. I don't know, I know Rob suggested masking tape. If anyone has built these kits before, come across this, and obviously with not doing it before, I don't know if a masking tape will pull off the printed patterns and brickwork and things. So if anybody's actually built these kits before and used masking tape themselves, drop us a comment. It would be nice to know if it works. I'm just, with how special this piece is, I'm just being very cautious. I don't really want to go wrong with it. Again, this side is exactly the same. Making sure it's flush at the bottom and flush with your folds, because that will build together like so. Oh, Paul, a very good afternoon to you. I hope you're keeping well on this lovely Saturday. bigger bits. I'm just debating whether I should go back to the paintbrush. It's going to be a lot quicker. Again, a handy thing of the manoeuvrability with PV8. You can get it roughly in line and then do your final positioning after. Again, I still have slight manoeuvrability just to make sure these edges are flush. Oh, guys, thank you for your comments. Walking around the Midlands and Paul. Transport tape if you don't want to use it. Yeah, this was my worry, Paul, was Rob's idea, obviously brilliant masking tape. We did a lot more decorating, but obviously this is much more delicate than just a wall with wallpaper on. I've only got the clear masking tape. It's actually craft masking tape, so I don't know if it is slightly less adhesive. I'm trying to think where I put it now. I did see it just the other day because poor Rob's desk kind of got taken over by me. I've got all my paint and my art stuff, and I'm sure somewhere I had a roll of masking tape. But I think we've all done it when you know where you put something, and when you want it, that safe place suddenly gets forgotten very quick until you come across it after either you bought a new one or when you gave up the idea. But I will definitely look into it. As I said, that was my worrying, because there's no spare sheets or anything. I was worried about going in and just taking off the lining. I suppose things like this side isn't too bad, but it is the outside of a building that worries me. Well, I know Rob appreciates my art skill. I don't think I'm even that good, so I will look out for that actually. I'm going to take a look at that now while this is drying. Oh, yeah, the surgical tape. Now, that's not a bad idea. And us being, I didn't even think of it. You know, when your brain just goes, have we got any of that? We might actually have some of that with us. We'll have a take a look in our kit bag after, I think. Because we have quite a few different tapes, so some of them are stickier than the others. Why didn't I think of that? Well, thank you very much. It's always appreciated. Yeah, it is one of those things, isn't it? Until someone says, you kind of go, duh. But blue masking tape, I can't say I've ever heard of that one, to be honest. Oh, so mine's coming up as painter's tape, but it's that sod's law. I have no idea where it is. Called Sign Medic 10. It's quite funny, it's not far off our company name, so how's that for spooky? I've actually seen corner. I hope I'm not the only one that's gone in and thought, yeah, I've got it all perfectly done. And then realised shortly after, there was one part I didn't think to hold and support. Pardon me. I need something heavy, I think, to just weigh these down. So, Paul and walking around the Midlands. Well, walking around Midlands, do you have a name you like to be called, or is that your... But have you both made some of the kits before, or... See, I'm not worried too much about the edges because you will be building that into the box itself. Ah, Matt. Hello, Matt. I just thought it's quite a long name to call you, so... That seems to have dried up well, so it's going in with that final one. As you see, it fits together so well. And hopefully this one should be a lot easier to glue in because it already has that support by the other side. But before I finish that, as I said, the difference... Oh, Paul, you were magic yourself then? Oh, where are... Yeah, it's a shame we actually know quite a few, especially down south, beginning of this year. So many companies that have actually shut doors. You know, they've had work during COVID and it's just now the funding's gone. They've not been given as much work. Now, one funny one I've said before, luckily that isn't glued down, was these storage lockers. But they're not actually indented or anything, so I really don't know if these are an optional or just to be cut out or not, because there is nothing on these instructions to say where it is. But I would assume they go inside. It talks about the garage adjourning wall, so I have a feeling it's just to go on there. And if anyone has come across it before, please shout out and say hello. But I can still go in with them after. So how about we get this building finally glued together, and then that is at least the start of this, so we can at least say today's live has been quite productive. It's lovely having people comment and get involved. Yeah, I was thinking that, Paul. I'm assuming it's on one of these walls, to be honest, on the inside of this, which I can just grab with tweezers after. Again, it's probably something I'll just see what Rob wants, because you don't actually really see it. This is the only thing. They've gone the details, but it's only when you lift it upside down that you even see the walls. So whether that's why they've just got it as a like optional and not a you have to follow it as such. But I am going to have to be very careful when cutting that one out, because I've noticed that was the only thing they've not indented, those storage lockers, so it's going to need a steady hand, I think, which isn't always the case with me. unfortunately. Oh, I've made a mess of this, haven't I? I should have really glued them both at the same time. There we go. This is the first part of the building complete. See, it does still need to dry, but it's going to be a lot, there is a lot more support in it drying than there was with the outer edges. Yes, we did, Paul. Thank you very much for the links. You sent them, was it Facebook you sent them through initially? We've just been very busy this week with work and things, so. And the plan is after to just go with some paints and things just to get rid of these edgings. That's one thing Yeah, I did. Paul, we got them a while ago, didn't we? It's appreciated. They're ready for us to use. At some point, Rob's just doing so much in the shed. He's did a really good section that hopefully we're going to show on the next video. Because of the plans with all the different levels. So. As you can see with the super glue, that's slight manoeuvrability, just to make sure it is all lined up. And then hopefully that should be dry by the time we need it. And these have dried pretty quick as well. This is nowhere as thick as the other though. So it does get a little bit fiddly from here. I found it, even though you would think it would straight away stick, it didn't. So I think, again, learning things this time. I'm going to go and glue already to get it stuck together. Because you have the support, the internal supports. But I found it was a bit of a task to get it to actually stick together the way you needed it to. So I'm definitely learnt from last time and going to already start that build as such, even if it's just one side for now. And then I can go in with the support. Support should just fit in there nicely. It was the second support that I'd realised these were slightly out of line. That's why I've made sure they're flush this time. But because of that, that affected the top, which I'm very cautious, being the bigger scale, it will be more noticeable. So this, when you come to stick it in, just fits into these slots very nicely. It's definitely a lot tighter this time, so again, this is not something you see as such, but it is so much more support added. And while some may choose not to glue it, I am going to go ahead and make sure it's glued in, again, just for that extra support. Oh, that's another good idea, Paul. Is some cotton That's another cracking idea. Anyone would think you've done this before. No, it's not something I had thought about, but I do have cotton again in my art supplies somewhere. I think they might be at mine though. But it's definitely something for the bigger kits. I think I will look at. That's, I suppose you've just got to be careful not to do it too tight and lose the shape that you do. So, but the ideas are really appreciated. As we said through the start of this, you know, we are at the very beginning of our journey of this. But if, you know, we can help anyone with how we've done it, and that is our aim, you know, just to not only document this journey for ourselves, but maybe help someone else who, like us, is in the position of just learning. You know, maybe some people that have done things before, if, you know, if we do something maybe differently, maybe someone looks at it and go, oh, I've not done it that way, that's a good idea. You know, it's, but the support we've had is just amazing. Jerry, welcome back. How was your apple pie? And it's fine, you can be late to the party. Fashionably late, they say, isn't it? Again, learning from the N-Gage, I've definitely done this a little bit differently. How I did that one, I built the support up gradually. As I said, it's the reason I did the N-Gage first was that practice, and it has helped with a few things. Jerry, you being late to the party, you will see we've actually got our first section of this built. The last two bits are drying. So in the meantime, we've started doing another section which isn't needed to connect straight away. So it meant people weren't watching and bored. So there we go. That's gone a lot better than it did before. So I think it was a good idea to practice. I know not everyone is going to be that fortunate and have a trial run. So if anybody ever builds this kit, I went ahead and glued these bits in and then pulled it together, but I've definitely found it a lot easier just doing one side, gluing that side, and then adding that side in. It's definitely something, if I get something similar on another kit, I will think of doing it like that. But that is now 2 bits that are built into this quite well. So, oh, Jerry, definitely, even the sheer difference. I was saying earlier, the sheer difference between the N-Gage and the 00 gauge. Even the simple things, because the cardboard isn't as thick because it's a smaller gauge, it is taking longer to dry. Which, obviously, on the live stream and that, you don't really want. Just to see my hands holding glue completely. But that's why it's nice when people get involved and we can chat while I'm doing these bits. But yeah, I have noticed such a big difference on even just for drying time. And we'll see if this has gone any further yet. There we go, we have that building. Now, this is where it starts getting fiddly again. This bit I did not enjoy on my previous kit. Was our baseboard here. Again, it's so fiddly, this one. And it's actually broken off already. Oh, yeah. Definitely, Jerry, it's definitely worth it in the end, no matter how long it takes. London Vic session touched over a week. Oh, jeez, Paul. You know, it's... The end gauge, in some senses, wasn't as bad. I think it took me a couple of nights. That's the only thing with doing this on a live stream, just to document it. For those who have never built the kits like me before, is sometimes I find myself going, oh, you know, I could have got on with it, but then it takes away from the purpose of this live stream. Much better than supermodels. Yeah, I'd rather spend my time making things like this, to be honest. So now we need our single side. Again, making sure you're getting the right side when you're gluing. But why this can be tricky is it doesn't go into anything. It literally just sits together. And that's the only thing with this I wasn't a fan of. If you've literally got to hold it there and just hope for the best. So again, I actually kind of did a step in the opposite way. I built onto this first and then I glued it together. I just felt I had a bit more support when gluing it to the building. You know, if you've looked, you've got the edges there to go to it. So I found by kind of skipping ahead and building it up, there was a lot more that glued to that edge, just again for support. So, no, Paul, in this, there's not actually any scores as such. But it literally just sits in. That's the problem with it. That's all it does is sit in. So you have to literally fit it in. This is why I wasn't the biggest fan of it. And especially with how much longer this takes. It's, you worry about support. So I did find with this one, building it up slightly, that enabled me to have more support when gluing it together. But I think for today, that might be the finisher of it. I think we've done quite a bit done today. I will go ahead and stick this last one in the tower. But for the next bit, I will save that for another live. We've actually got to go out this afternoon anyway. But this is the one I made the mistake on last time. Because of how I'd built it up, it wasn't flat. It's come flat this time. But it wasn't flat, and that then affected the chimney of the end gauge. So I'm definitely happy with how I've done it this time, as opposed to before. So if anybody's doing this for the first time, sometimes as you go along, doing it slightly different from what the instructions say, it's still ineffectively following it, but it's gluing it in a more supportive way, I would say. And again, this second one, you have more support underneath, on top. So there is more support for certain parts as well, which is why I'm going to leave that start of the tower base for the next live. And I'm glad Rob bought me these. I am enjoying the precision of them. Obviously, the bigger section I've learned, I will go in with a paintbrush. And I just glued the wrong bit. Again, why I like the PVA glue is I can just wipe it off. So we're just going to go ahead and do this last bit. And then I hope you all have a lovely Saturday. We've got a busy one ahead today, so... The only thing that I did find on the last one is it had cut it off. There's a big delay from what I say to yourselves, longer than even TikTok when I do my portrait lives on there. So if I ever cut off, I never mean to, It's not it wasn't realising how much of a delay. Rob actually said to me after, he said, oh, you literally disappeared, which was not my intention. So Jerry, I know you were on the last one, so I do apologise for disappearing mid-sentence, as I believe I did. So I do apologise, but I think this is it for today, guys. We've got a lot further on than just sticking windows. I might go ahead and go with the base plate, but I am not sure yet. So you might see it kind of starting to build together. But here are our 2 bits done today. So I thank everyone for joining in. It's lovely to see more and more people each one. The only thing I do find is, unfortunately, when it uploads, it doesn't bring the comments. So, as I said, that's also a learning curve, even with the lives. So I thank you all very much and catch you soon. Delft Junction, I've just caught your comment. What do you mean push out bits? Is it these bits? I think Rob said that you'd mention more windows and that. They are kept, so don't you worry. Okay. Rob, was it Delft Junction? I've got him here just saying keep the bits. It was Delft that said to you about the windows, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Yeah, he's just commented now. So thank you from us, Delft. Even the cardboard bits I have kept. So take care, everyone. I've just now got to make sure that it turns off. And apologies for an excited doggy. Take care, everyone. I've just now got to make sure that it turns off. And apologies for an excited doggy.